bankers and the brokers are upset. Goldman Sachs and Merrill Lynch's saw themselves as lead pipe cinches. Now they've landed in the biggest screw-up yet. Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns and all their kind have turned out to be the blind leading the blind. They are clearly the nitwittest in survival of the fittest. Let me modestly just say what I've got in mind. I am changing my name to Fannie Mae. I am headed down to Washington, D.C. I'll be glad they got my back, because what they did for Freddie Mac will be perfectly acceptable to me. I am changing my name to Fannie Mae, and I'm headed for that great receiving line. And when they hand $1 trillion out, I'll be standing with my hand out. Yes, sir, I'll get mine. When my creditors are screaming for their dough, I'll be proud to tell them all where they can go. They won't have to scream and holler, they'll be paid to their last dollar.
Oh, yay, Martin. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on MIRS TV. This is Janet Reiner, and today's Thursday, June 6th. Today we have special guests Martin Mandelman and John Wright, and as you heard, we just had an encore performance of Martin Mandelman's rendition of his own. Is that your song, or did you make that up? Or?
Well, it's been written by a lot of people. It started out as a song by Tom Paxton. It was written about the Chrysler bailout, but it's been updated quite a bit.
I love it. I love it. I wanted to give a little bio of you so that people know who you are, okay? And I was pretty impressed when I was looking up your bio and as to how much education you have. You actually, let's see here, I see here that you did your undergraduate work majoring in economics with your MBA at Pepperdine University, and you completed a specialized master's program at the University of Missouri at Kansas City Block School of Business. Is that correct?
Go Kangaroos!
Yay! Yeah. Well, also, I don't think people know this, is the fact that you also were the featured speaker at the American Bar Association Conference on Consumer Financial Services. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was in front of a couple of 200-300 banking attorneys, yeah, for the Bar Association. I also was the speaker at the Ninth Circuit Judicial Conference a couple years ago in front of the Ninth Circuit justices.
Right, where you spoke on the foreclosure crisis and causes of the current economic meltdown. We also have John Wright. John, are you there?
I'm here all the way from the Golden Gate, the Golden State of Northern
Yay! Yay, John, you've been on. I love having you on because you have such a wonderful personality and you're so smart. I wanted to give a little bio on you as well so that people know who you are. Is that okay?
Sure, that would be fine with me.
You were born and raised in San Jose, and you were also, you ran away from home at the age of 16, and towards the end of 2008, things changed for you. And then you started to be, you actually started a blog as well, and in your blog, your site tracking results show that your blog is regularly and routinely visited by not just Bank of America, but also the House of Representatives and the United States Senate, as well as the Executive Office of the President of the United States. The President's his administration is watching you, aren't they?
I always joke around that I'm a dirty little secret there in Washington, but yeah, that's true. My tracker shows routinely that the Executive Office of the President of the United States Senate, the House of Representatives, routinely visit my site. I don't know if they're eating their lunch while they're looking at it, but they're definitely looking at it.
They're having a fun time.
Maybe they're throwing up their lunch.
You actually started your blog in May of 2010, and then you also let's see, and I think so. Tell us again why you started your blog. I believe it said something to do with your company that you've owned for 25 years.
Yeah, that's true. Somewhere around in 2008, I have a company that I owned for over 20 years. It was a driving school, and I owned a chain of driving schools here in Northern California that seemed pretty insulated from any recessions, because here in the state of California, people have to take driving by law. But this particular recession was so harsh that I compare it to a hurricane. It definitely was one of the worst hurricanes my little company had ever gone through. But experiencing difficult times in 2008, I decided to apply for a loan modification like many other Americans. And I experienced the same runaround as many other Americans did. And then I basically retained a law firm to fight for me to get that loan modification. But it was around that time that I decided that this needed to not only be taken into the court of law, but that I would find more power in taking it to what I call the court of public opinion, which is the birth of piggybankblog.com.
And when you had your business, it was actually a very prominent business. You had over 1 million customers with an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. It was throughout the whole state, wasn't it?
It was pretty much throughout Northern California. I had several locations, lots of employees, lots of customers. Like you said, over 1 million customers I'd serviced with an A+ rating, and so, I was quite surprised when I went into this. I always, maybe perceived that I might lose my home. I never thought that I would lose my, lose my business in this, because I had a pretty solid foundation. But one person said it accurately when they said, wow, it looks like they took you apart piece by piece. And literally that's what happened. I mean, in the end, I think I had $5 left in my pocket.
Well, that's pretty standard for anybody going through foreclosure. They're being taken apart piece by piece, and to the point where, like you, they'll end up with literally $5 in their pocket if they're lucky.
If they're lucky, I remember at the time not quite understanding what was hitting my customer base. I'd survived recessions before, and it could be many different reasons why we're having a recession. But this one, I remember thinking to myself something was different. And all these years later, being educated about it as I am, I realized when people in, especially in Northern California, that the homes are somewhere around, at that time, you were at least looking at spending $400,000 to get just any home here. But what I realized was, people really didn't care about their kids driving or learning how to drive when they were actually losing their homes. So basically, I realized that it was what the banks had done and the government, which is I hope we talk a little bit more about today with Mr. Andelman, to our economy, that really was the result of me losing my business.
Right. Martin, did you get your earpiece on? I want to go back a little bit on your background a little bit. When you actually at one point had a company called Fourth Floor. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was my consulting firm, the Fourth Floor, yes.
Right. You had a lot of customers, very, very prominent customers. And before I get into that, I just wanted to let everyone know that some of your customers were people like Merrill Lynch. You had J.P. Morgan, Centura Health Systems, Kaiser, Presente, Warner Brothers.
Sure.
Yeah, and so you actually come from a very corporate background, and you are familiar, let's see, Nationwide was another one, Arthur Gallagher. You actually come from a background working with prominent corporations, so you are very good at negotiating, very good at working with people and helping, bridging the gap, I guess you can say. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah, certainly I worked with a lot of Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies for 20-some years.
I know. I got to laugh at this because I've known you for a little bit, and I know that you have your heart in the right place, and you're trying to do what you can to help the homeowners. And we all have no matter who we are, we always have our people who claim otherwise. And I just wanted to see about hitting something on head first, if that's okay with you. Back in 2010, you had a woman who claimed that you were not who you say you are, which I find very amusing because I've known you for a lot. I've known you for a while, and I can't help it to think that some of these people who are distractors are there just to distract.
Oh, you got to be talking about Aaron Baldwin.
I didn't want to say a name. Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. Sorry.
But I know that.
What do you want me to say? The woman's out of her mind.
Well, I know, and here's the thing that I wanted to address is the fact that you actually were in communication with her sister, which I thought was a very lovely thing. I want to give kudos to you.
No, everybody can tell. I responded. I don't want to beat her up. I think she, I don't really look. I don't understand crazy, so I don't really know what to say.
Well, I think as intelligent as you are and as prolific as you are, I think there will always be distractors. But I wanted to read, and the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because you did a very lovely thing, and I wanted to make sure people knew about it.
Well, look, I think you have to realize that if after you've written 900 articles about the financial and foreclosure crisis, you're bound to have at least one kook.
Listen, just to have one, you're doing pretty darn good. So I wanted to let you know. So I wanted to tell you that I read your letter to your Aaron's sister. I thought that was a very beautiful letter, and basically saying that and I'm going to quote what she said about you. Okay, she said, "Please know that despite the multiple indiscretions she as an Aaron has accused of committing, she does not represent the loving parents that raised her. Also, I know that as many lives as she has been accused of hurting, nothing compares to the pain she has caused her own parents. I'm not even sure I'm writing you. I don't want anything to do with the logic dump. May the rest of the affected parties find forgiveness in the heart." And then you ended up writing, you wrote, I believe, "I cannot thank you enough for contacting me. I'm very sympathetic to your situation and appreciate the insight. It's so unfortunate that she struggles, as she obviously has skills and intelligence that are far above the norm. And I want you to know that it takes a lot of class and intelligence to be able to bring someone up and say something positive when it's very easy you could say something negative. And I wanted to make sure to give you kudos."
Well, thanks. I don't want to fight with anybody. I mean, I don't want to fight with anyone.
No, I don't think you do either. And I wanted to make sure to bring this up because there'll always be questions, and I want to make sure to address them head on. And like I said, I've known you for a little bit, and I've seen nothing but good things, and you have a wonderful heart, and I think the best intentions, and you do a lot of positive work. So as far as loan modifications, segue into, now I also understand you do what's called a rest report. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, not really. I don't do anything with the rest report.
Oh, you don't?
I've recommended things like the rest report in the past. Here's where you really have to start from. This is what everybody has to really come to understand. The loan modifications started, let's go back to 2009. And it was the biggest mess I've ever seen in my life. There's never been anything like that. It was unbelievable. President Obama went on television on February 18th, 2009, and he described a program that has never really existed. He made it sound easy to do. He made it sound like you just call your bank directly, and somehow you're going to call your bank and it's going to say press 3 if you think your payments are too high. And that was never going to happen. It wasn't described well. The expectations were terrible, and the servicers were in no way prepared, obviously, to do any of it. So we had a nightmare of 2 years of absolute hell. It was just awful for homeowners, and I screamed about it as much, if not more than anybody. But today, we can't abandon that, because the fact is that it's not for all servicers. There's nothing consistent about this, but for a number of big servicers, they've gotten better. I'm not saying it's any fun, but it's better. And so today, you can apply for a loan modification without the same fear that you saw in 2009 or 10. But we should all know by now, after watching this for 5 years, that there's no easy way through this. So if you can get your loan modified and that will solve the problem, I think there's no question. The numbers speak for themselves. That's the easiest, most certain thing to do. If you can't do that, then there's other paths that you can look into. But for people that are out there telling people that they should not try to get their loan modified, I think it's very bad advice.
Well, you've been a very prolific blogger about all of this. Can you tell us as to how is it that you got into blogging and what made you decide? Because you're an economist at heart. How is it that you decided to go into these loan modifications and start a blog?
Well, the reality is I started writing about this meltdown because Ben Bernanke, our chairman of the Fed, started blaming this on subprime borrowers, which I found terribly offensive. It sort of sounds like subpar humans, doesn't it? Subprime borrowers. It's like, oh no, not the subprime borrowers. He made that famous classic stupid statement about how this crisis was going to be contained to the subprime market. And of course, the only place it's been contained to is the planet Earth. So he was just slightly off. But I mean, I started writing about it because the U.S. government was characterizing it so inaccurately and blaming it on subprime borrowers as if these people went out and bought homes they knew they couldn't afford. I mean, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. Although I understand there may be a handful here and there, the vast majority of people did not buy houses they couldn't afford. Nobody does that. I mean, no, you know why nobody does it? Because nobody wants to move their refrigerator around that much. That's why. Because they have to find somebody like me who has a truck, and then I've got to go over there on Saturday, and they always live on, it's always on the second floor, and we've always got to carry it to a third floor, and nobody wants to do that. Nobody moves their whole family across town, changes the drapes, buys a new couch, puts the change of address in, moves their kids into the bedroom, and then they go, oh, gee, can we afford it? No, actually we can't. I mean, it's absurd. So I started writing about it to poke fun at that and say, look, it's absurd to blame this on subprime borrowers. It's not the borrowers that caused the credit markets to seize up in the summer of 2007. It's the way these loans were packaged and sold around the world as securities. We all should know that today. But I started writing about it in 2008 when not everybody understood that, and that's why I started writing about it. I knew they wouldn't understand it. What happened is that I got stuck here because, it just got worse and worse and worse. I was kind of hoping it would get better, and it didn't. It's just worsened.
Right, right. And Martin, I think you've had your blog for, 10 years now? Is that how long you've had yours?
My blog has been around since 2008.
2008. 10, 11, 12,
yeah, I started writing about it in 2007, but I didn't know what a blog was then. I was just writing about it in print.
Right. And so you have, how many followers do you have? I think I read somewhere about 1 million followers following you now?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've had about 6 million readers since I started, 6.5 million readers. But I don't know. I mean, it depends on the month anymore. I have something like 60, 70,000 people a month, I guess.
And John, I know that I think I've asked you this before, but can you let us know, how was it that when you started your blog, you didn't even know what a blog was, did you?
No, I didn't. Somebody suggested that, they'd seen that I was going around leaving comments on other people's blogs and articles. And I guess a lot of people liked what I had to say. And they found out what law firm I was at. And they were saying, I want to be with, my name is John Wright, I'm fighting back. And they said, you should, really do a blog. And I said to them, what's a blog? And somebody sent me a 15, 20-minute video. And the next thing you know, I'm up and running. But it's been a learning experience. Every day I'm learning something new about it. But I guess I'm a fast learner. Yeah.
I guess so. I have to laugh. This is like I don't want to say Clash of the Titans, but between the two of you guys are one of the top 2 bloggers, aren't you?
Well, I think that's right. Really, I always looked up to Martin Andelman from Andelman, Andelman Matters there. Mm-hmm. And we've communicated since the first day I got out there. Of course, he didn't really know what to make out of me. Because my blog's a lot different than his. I always told him, I said, his is more like a Nightline and mine's more like the Jerry Springer Show, but it's an uncommon dialogue. We're also like our relationship. Martin's a great guy. He's more like the Steve Martin character, and I'm more like the John Candy character in the Train Automobiles. But yeah, it's true. I didn't really know what a blog was when I started.
Well, Martin, if I'm not mistaken, you're like the pinnacle of the bloggers because of not only of the fact that you started at the very beginning, but also of what you write about. As intelligent as you are, you write about some pretty intellectual stuff that a lot of not that many people can follow.
I mean, my facts are always right. My opinions are my own, but very clear. But my facts you can count on. They're right.
I'm sure you are. I have no doubt, not a shadow of a doubt, that your facts are right. So let me ask you both of these. Let me ask you this, Martin. When you first started writing this blog, at what point were you able to decide, or at least come to the conclusion, that you could help homeowners in assisting them with these modifications?
I could help escalate their case. I could, reach out to Bank of America or to Auckland or to One West or other banks. And try to get them to pay attention to something that they weren't paying attention to. should see this by now, and if you don't, then you really should listen to what I'm about to say. It's a mess. I mean, it's not a simple mess. It's not a little mess. It's a crisis type of mess. I mean, it's not easy for anybody. Obviously, it's not easy on homeowners. Obviously, it's not easy on banks. I mean, Bank of America loses $1 billion a quarter on this kind of servicing stuff. I mean, it's just turned into an absolute mess. Now, I know there's a lot of people cheerleading out there saying, you know, oh, the real estate market's back and all this crap. It's nonsense. I mean, there's nothing, we're not done with this. This isn't over by any means. And it's actually, I think it's going to get much worse before it gets better.
Well, and that leads me to the next question is that, you know, you say that this whole landscape is a mess. And I want to, and because you have such a close relationship to the banks, I want to make sure to ask you, you know, I know without a doubt that the perceptions that we as homeowners have of the banks and what's actually going on with the banks, there's a huge disconnect, and there's a huge misconception and preconceived notions as to what's actually going on. Now, I know, like, staying on the topic of modifications, I know with your association with the banks, are you finding that the banks are willing to modify? Because here's what I hear. I hear that the banks are very difficult to work with, and the banks are very difficult to, and the banks are constantly losing the paperwork. You never talk to the same person again. I know that there's two sides to every story, and I know you have more of an insight as to what goes on with the banks. Can you sort of shed some light on that?
I think what you're asking is, are they really modifying loans, or?
Are they modifying loans? I mean, there seems to be a problem in communication. You know, as far as getting documentation to them. I mean, tell us what's going on with these banks and why we're having such a huge disconnect.
I mean, I think what you're asking about is, I mean, there's no question that loans are being modified. We've modified something like 6 million loans. So I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I'm not saying it's enough, and I'm not saying it's any fun, but the fact is we modified millions of loans. So all I'm trying to tell people is that if you haven't, I mean, if you're not trying to get your loan modified because of what you heard in 2009 or 2010, it's probably not a good idea, because the reality is that if you look at people that are going down the other path towards litigation, that's not an easy road either, and in fact, most lose. So, I mean, you know, look, I'm a pragmatist. I'm a practical person. It's like, what do we do? I think homeowners have to start to ask themselves, what do I do to put myself in the best possible position going forward? What do I do to get through this? Because this is a nightmare for a lot of people. I've talked to thousands of homeowners, and it's a nightmare. And so at a certain point, what do I do to get through it? How do I get through this thing and put myself in the best possible position 2 years from now? And for some people, it's get their loan modified, and for others, it may be to file lawsuits or go down another path or use bankruptcy or something. But yet, I think it's important to get on a path, the best path for you, and pursue it actively, and not just sort of pretend it's going to go away, because it's not going to go away.
What do you recommend homeowners as far as for them to get prepared to do a loan modification?
Oh, I think the first thing you have to do is determine, here's an easy rule of thumb, determine whether you have enough income to make a modified payment. To do that, try this. This is a simple solution to this. Take the balance of your first mortgage. Let's just say it's $300,000. Multiply it times 1.5. So that would bring it to $450,000. And then reduce that answer to 4 digits. So it'd be about $4,500. Now, that's sort of a target minimum income. Now, you might be able to get away with $4,200 or $4,300, $4,200, but anything under $41,000 or $4,000 is probably not enough income. The bank's going to say you don't have enough income to modify the loan. So the first thing to do is kind of figure out, do I have enough income to make this modified payment according to what they're looking at? Now, if there are, if let's say that in that example you only have $4,000 a month in income and you have a $300,000 loan, it doesn't necessarily mean that you won't be able to get a modification. There could be other reasons why they want to modify that loan. But let me just say this. Here's one of the things that's been the most, it's sort of, to me, the most unfair. It's the most ridiculous. It's just the most annoying about this whole thing. What this comes down to is who owns your loan, and if it's Fannie or Freddie or FHA, if it's any of the government agencies, then there's the servicers are limited as to what they're allowed to do. They've got to follow Fannie Mae's rule book or Freddie Mac's rule book, and so those people make the rules for the loans they own, and they own about, I guess, 65% or so, maybe 70% of the loans out there. So the first thing you should do is go online, type into Google Fannie Mae loan lookup or Freddie Mac loan lookup, and they'll give you a site right there at the top, and you can enter your information, and they'll tell you whether Fannie or Freddie owns your loan. And that's where I would start. I would want to know, is it a Fannie or Freddie loan? If it is, then I know I'm going to be subject to their rules, and their rules can be difficult. And if it's not, then I know I may have a better chance at getting a different kind of modification, because as I think we've all know, Fannie and Freddie do not do principal reductions ever. Now, will they in the future? I don't really know, but they certainly haven't been willing to up until now.
How successful have the modifications been? Because from what I understand, less than 5% of loan applications are actually been turned into permanent modifications. Is that correct, or is that figure too low?
I don't know where that stat comes from. I'd love to see it. I mean, I'd love to know where it comes from. I haven't seen anything like that. It's hard to imagine. I'll tell you something. I doubt that could be true. I mean, I'll tell you why. I'm just looking it up right now. If that were true, then we would need, I mean, that doesn't seem possible to me. I mean, I'll tell you why. In order for 5% to be approved
for permanent loan modifications.
Yeah, that would mean that we would have had to have about 100 million people apply for loan modifications.
That's about right.
Well, we don't even have 100 million mortgages in this country. I mean, there's only about 55 million first mortgages in this country, and today that number may be 50 million. So it can't be true that 5% get approved, or else we wouldn't. The numbers don't work.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Now, you've worked with the banks, and so I have a couple of questions, and I'm going to go into the Wall Street thing, and I want to ask you about promissory notes. Now, I think one of the questions that homeowners really want to ask is, there's an idea out there that the original promissory notes are not really in existence. Do you know whether or not that's true or not? Or do they have the original promissory notes to modify, or no?
Yeah. Okay. First of all, it's ridiculous to think that all the promissory notes. I mean, it's not true that all these notes have been destroyed. That's another one of these kind of rumors. I'm sure there were some that have been lost or some that have been destroyed. I really don't know. But, I mean, if you ask any of the top foreclosure defense lawyers in the country, I asked Matt Widener in Florida, also another blogger, and I asked Tom Cox in Maine and Bruce Levitt in New Jersey. And these are some of the top lawyers of the country in this area. And I asked them all about this, lost note idea a couple of years ago. And all of them said that at the end of the day, if you push them hard enough, they do show up with the note. I mean, the fact is these notes are negotiable instruments, and they don't want to take them out of the vault. They don't want to have them running around the country in someone's briefcase. But they do show up with the note at the end of the day if you push it hard enough. And you can ask Matt, ask Matt Widener, ask Tom Cox, ask the lawyers that have been down this path, and they'll tell you. I mean, the banks do show up with the note. And the more important thing is, even if they don't have the note, that doesn't mean that they can't correct the problem and foreclose. There's a lot of people out there that think, well, they lost the note, therefore I don't owe my mortgage, and it's just not true.
What are
the fact is, in the state of Washington, I was just asking Scott Staffney, who's a lawyer up there, a trusted lawyer of mine that I know well, and he was explaining the same thing, that the UCC provides for a process if a note is lost, and Washington State provides for a process if a note is lost. So just because a note is lost doesn't mean that you get a free house.
Okay, and John, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, I'll just echo that. I used to, when I first came out here blogging, I read the same stuff that everybody else reads online. And there seemed to be this rumor that if they didn't have the note, you didn't owe the mortgage. But, even one of the most scandalous attorneys I can think of that was fighting the banks told me that the same thing Martin said, that once they pushed him, eventually the bank did come into court with all 1,500 notes for the litigants that were in the case. So, I'll echo that. That's something that started out as a rumor. And I also echo the point there that he makes, that it doesn't mean even when they do lose it, that they don't have to pay their mortgage. They can certainly remedy that. Clearly, it doesn't sound very fair if you're the investor, or let's just talk about a car. If you lose the title to your car, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden you don't own your car anymore. There's certainly remedies for that. So I have to agree with Martin that that's been what I've been hearing on this side too.
Now, do they come in with copies of the notes or the original notes?
The attorney that I spoke to said they came in with the originals when they were pushed, that they pretty much were producing copies before that point. But certainly the attorney I was speaking to, if that was a true issue, that they didn't have the actual notes, he would have loved to have broadcasted that. But, I wasn't there, but what he told me was they came in with all 1,500 original notes.
If it were true, would we have lost 6 million homes already to foreclosure?
I don't know. You tell me. Do you think so?
Well, I think what you're asking. I think what you're saying. We've certainly had thousands of cases. It's been 5 years. We've seen what happens as this. We've lost 6 million houses to foreclosure. If this were easy to do or to beat this in court, we wouldn't have lost 6 million homes, right? It's just the writing is on the wall. This is a nightmare. It's a terrible scenario for everybody, and homeowners are paying the price. There's no question. It's an awful thing. It's not fair. It's not right. I understand, but it's not stopping that from happening.
Martin, I'm sure you hear a lot of really unusual and sad cases, and I know that you try to help as much as you can. But has there ever been a situation where you just cannot help them at all?
Wait, what was that last part?
I know that there are a lot of unusual situations. I know that you try to help as many people as you can. I know you've been very successful in helping a lot of people. Now, is there a situation or a scenario in which you just could not help them? I know you've been very successful in helping people at the 11th hour, 59th minute in stopping their foreclosures. Has there ever been a situation which you have not been able to help them?
Well, yeah, first of all, I think you shouldn't give up, okay? I really think you should not give up. I have a reader who fought for 3.5 years and finally got his loan modified. I think you should not give up. If you decide to go down that path, I think you should stay with it. But, at the end of the day, if you don't have enough income to make a modified payment, there's really nothing you're going to be able. The chances of saving that house are very remote.
Okay, so Martin, So I have a question. Getting off of the loan modification scenario, I wanted to ask you about what happens with the promissory note once it's done. Now, I know that you and I have talked about, is there any insurance policies that are placed against these promissory notes? And what happens to these notes when they're collateralized or when it goes to Wall Street?
What, are you asking about insurance and paying the loan off, you mean?
Right.
Okay. First of all, there's only one type of insurance that would make someone's mortgage payments, and that would be an insurance policy purchased by the homeowner, separate from their mortgage. They got something in the mail, and it said, if you're out of work, we'll make your payments. It's a separate insurance policy. Now, that's not what we're talking about, right? Because the homeowner would know they have insurance for unemployment. It's like disability insurance. There is no type of insurance that paid off your loan and that makes you not own it. In other words, there's something called default insurance, and this gets a little technical, but it's not difficult to realize. Default insurance would pay off a percentage of your loan depending on how much you put down. So if you had an 80-20 loan, the default insurance that the servicer may have taken out might pay 18-20% of the loan. It doesn't pay the 80%. It just pays a percent.
Martin, can you hear me? I think you're breaking up. John, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me, Janet?
I can hear you. I think we lost Martin for a little bit. So,
Martin always gives the technical aspects of things, and that's where, my blog's better at putting things at an 8th grade level.
yes.
And your question is, no. He's saying that there's no insurance like everybody's saying. So I think that we can sum that part up. I mean, the thing is here, Janet, there's a lot of things on the internet that we can see out there that people are offering as legal theories. Now, I like when attorneys are out there blogging. There's several of them out there. The problem that I see is when they don't stick to just telling the laws and they start speaking about theories. A lot of these theories, what they're doing is they're having the homeowner go and try these theories while they spend their money on litigation, while knowing very full well that it's very unlikely they're going to win that. I mean, that's why you're not seeing too many wins. So basically, they're just throwing up there whatever they can see that will stick, and then they just throw the next thing up. But I've also heard, coming back to what you said, and I used to believe that there was insurance and that the insurance paid these off, and so therefore we have a zero balance and all that kind of stuff. But according to Martin in his investigation, and as an economist, let's remember that Martin's an economist with connections to bank executives, that the answer is no, there is no insurance like in the way that everybody's talking about.
Now, John, I understand you're also trying to help homeowners do loan modifications as well. Is that correct?
Well, I'm kind of like, if you considered me a liquor store, I offer all sorts of things in my liquor store. I mean, I'm kind of homeowner a la carte.
Okay.
There may be some items in there I don't necessarily agree with. For example, if I notice that the other liquor store down the street is offering porn, I'm probably going to offer porn, but it doesn't mean I'll read it, okay? But yes, modifications are one of the things that I suggest for homeowners, in fact, for the majority of them. Because let's say that these legal arguments are correct, and I've seen the arguments. Some of them are clearly correct. The reality is, Janet, that the average homeowner would have to spend $50,000 to $150,000 in litigation to even have a chance at even, making a dent with the bank. Now, how many homeowners are out there that have that kind of money to throw at litigation? So I say, listen, I think they should get a loan mod because I think that they're interested in saving their house. And then if they save up some money for litigation later, they should do that. So yes, I do echo what Martin's saying there. I don't think that, people should not get loan modifications because it's suicidal. I've watched a lot of people losing their homes not considering it. Right.
Did Martin come back up?
Yeah. Can I just, I want to add something I'd like to be very clear about.
Absolutely.
I don't care what a homeowner decides to do. I don't care if they decide to try to get their loan modified, or they try to sue their bank, or they try to file bankruptcy, or whatever it is. I don't care which path they choose. I just want them to make the decision based on accurate information. That's all. For example, I don't care if you want to burn your house to the ground. I just want somebody to tell you before you do that you probably will go to jail for that and you might hurt innocent people. If you still decide to do it, that's on you. I can't tell you what to do. I never tell homeowners what to do. I have kids. Everybody here have kids? If you have kids, you've learned not to tell other people what to do, right? I don't care what you do. Do whatever you want, but I just want you to have accurate information to base whatever you do upon. I don't want to see you go down a path believing that something that's not true. That's all.
Well, I don't know if you can hear me right now, Janet, but part of the problem that I see is people go and join these law firms, and then they sit there and do nothing, and they sit there and not pay their mortgage for 3 years, thinking that the law firm's going to win. Well, every month that goes by, they owe more and more on their loan, And the sad thing that I see is by the time they do decide to want to get a loan mod, it's now too late. They owe too much money. That's why people who are, being part of mass joinders or class actions or even personal litigation should not, sit there and do nothing, because each month that eventually catches up. And if the more time that goes by, harder it is going to be to get that loan modification. And I'm telling you right now, seeing things 30,000 feet high from my blog, every single one of them who fights legally ends up losing their home, maybe minus one or two, and I'm talking about 1,000, when getting a loan modification would have simply kept them in their home.
So, John, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Martin. That is, when you're helping homeowners through these loan modification process, what do you recommend for them to be prepared for? And what do you see is probably one of the most, what do you recommend for them to be prepared?
Well, I think that they should be, first of all, let's keep in mind that a lot of these homeowners have, like myself, have been abused through the first loan modification process. So the first thing they need to do is set their mind in saying that it's not going to be the same as the first time around. I mean, just like Iraq. We went into Iraq the first time, and we didn't know what we were doing, maybe. But the second time into Iraq, we knew where all the roadside bombs were at. And I think that this is kind of the way they need to think. This loan modification process we're talking about now has been fine-tuned. We know where all the roadside bombs are at, but that they should, totally cooperate with it. For example, if there's paperwork required or bank statements, they shouldn't have the attitude of, why should I give them that? It's not going to work anyways. It's never going to work. They need to actually, come at it seeing success instead of failure. But I think that if they really want a loan modification, that they should certainly approach, me through my site or Martin Andelman, so that, I can hook them up with Martin Andelman. Because what makes Martin unique out there is he has a dialogue with the bank executive. So he can literally, if something goes haywire, he can literally pick up the phone and call somebody at 9 o'clock at night, an executive at Bank of America, and they're able to just stop it right there. So the first step they should do is maybe contact me by email at piggybankblog@earthlink.net, or contact Martin Andelman, because certainly loan modifications are the only way that they're going to save their house. And if they wait too long, it could be too late.
Okay, well, thank you. And Martin, now, welcome back, Martin. Martin?
Yeah, let me give you this is Mandelman's tips.
Okay.
Mandelman's tips on getting through this crisis. Number one, save money. Start saving money if you haven't already. Start today. Save as much as you can. Garage sales, yes. Babysitting, of course. Everything you can do, save money. You may need the money to save your house. You may need the money to move. You may need the money for God knows what. But no matter what, when this is over, you're going to need a vacation. So start saving money now. Number two, don't drink. And if you drink, don't think. There's no drinking and thinking in this process. If you drink and start thinking, the next thing you know, you're going to believe all kinds of crazy stuff that just is not true. Don't drink and think. It will not reduce your stress. It only disrupts your sleep, and it makes it harder to deal with the stress. Number three, cut down on sugar. Sugar does the same thing. It makes it hard. It disrupts your sleep, and it gives you these emotional ups and downs. And number four is increase your exercise by a little bit each day. Take an extra walk in the evening for half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever. A little more exercise every day. That'll help you sleep better at night and deal with the stressful situation. Because no matter what, this is stressful. Now, if you follow those 4 rules, you may or may not have solved your problem 6 months from now. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But no matter what, if you follow those 4 rules, then 6 months from now, you will have lost 30 pounds, and you will have saved up 30 grand, and you'll feel like $1 million.
Words of wisdom.
You'll be ahead of the game. People get caught up in this thing, and they stop doing everything. They stop saving, they stop exercising, they stop eating right, and it makes it that much harder on them. We need to realize that this is a real-life crisis. It is a real problem. It is not going to go away, and none of it's going to be easy, and none of it's going to be fun. Now, let's understand that. That's what we're into here, and now let's try to get the facts, and put ourselves in the best possible position going forward. That's all we can do.
Well, Martin, words of wisdom from Martin. Thank you. One of the things I want to ask you, just touch very briefly on, is why is it that whenever a homeowner calls the banks, you can never get the same person? You never get the same person, and they never return calls, and they always constantly losing the paperwork. How is that happening? Why is that happening?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's become obvious. I mean, number one, let me just say, loans were never written in order to be written down when they're defaulted on. I mean, nobody ever intended this to be the case. Foreclosures used to be 1% or 2% of all loans, not 30%. So clearly, nobody was ready for this crisis. I mean, and it's been a nightmare for people as they go through the crisis. I mean, I can tell you that Bank of America's hired some 50,000 people over the last 3 years. I mean, they used to have 3,500. Now there's 50,000. I mean, it's a huge mess, and it's not going to be. I don't see it getting any better, significantly better. It gets incrementally better, but not by a lot. It's still a nightmare to go through, and you just have to get in there and slug it out and get your paperwork in. And when they, when a bank loses something, you go, okay, lost it again, send it in again. I mean, you just have to have the right attitude. It's a mental game. You have to have the right attitude about it, and you have to just keep going no matter what. I mean, if I can help, I can help. If I can't, I can't. I try to do what I can do, but, it's never going to be fun, and it's never going to be easy.
Well,
but it's all we've got. Now, let me just say something else here. I think the federal government has failed at every turn, and the state governments have done no.
Oop, we lost him again. John?
I'll take out from there. Let me tell you, is he said the government, and I think that's the magic words. That a lot of people just want to blame the banks, Janet, but really, this all started when the federal government decided to get into the banking business. Really, that's it was like equivalent in my mind when they got rid of Glass-Steagall Act and allowed these banks to do whatever they wanted. It was equivalent to Alan Greenspan and the federal government saying that, basically here we're going to lay a bowl of cocaine down here in front of cocaine addicts, and we think they're going to regulate themselves. But I think that's where the problem started, and that's where the problem ends, is with the federal government, Janet.
Right, and we haven't even gotten to the issue regarding CDOs or going on to Wall Street, and CDOs are collateralized debt obligations, and when they securitize the notes or anything like that. I know Martin has been very instrumental, being the fact that he's an economist. Whether or not Martin, are you there at all?
No.
He's not there.
I was kind of hoping he would sing something on the way out, but
I know. Martin, you're back.
Sorry, Skype seems to not be friendly today. I don't know why.
Oh no. So anyway, I asked the question as to whether or not what is it with these banks that they're constantly losing paperwork. You're never talking to the same person. And you said that,
Well, look, I think, let me say this about losing paperwork. I've followed 4,000 or 5,000 people through this process, and I have not seen or heard reports about the lost paperwork the way I did 2 years ago. I mean, it's certainly gotten much better. Today you can submit things online. You don't have to submit things, through fax. I mean, now every servicer is different, so I can't say across the board, but, the big servicers, I mean, Bank of America, Chase, OneWest, I mean, you can now submit things online, and I haven't heard the complaints about losing paperwork like anywhere near like I did 2 years ago.
Well, there's something they can do to avoid that, Janet. A lot of times, at the beginning, they didn't tell us to do this, but I found out that what they need to do is write their loan number on the top of every document they send in. Now, they didn't tell us to do that the first time, so I think we had our loan number on the first document. But that certainly can help cut down on their paperwork being lost by putting their loan number at the top of every single document they send in.
Now, do you guys, both of you, I'm going to pose this question to both of you. Do you feel as if the banks are listening to the people and are trying to make some changes to the internal systems to be able to have it more of a free flow of paperwork? Martin?
I'll let Martin answer that one since he
Wait, do I think the banks are doing what?
I know that there's been a lot of complaints. Do you feel as if the banks are trying to modify their internal systems to be able to handle the influx of paperwork on a smoother? Do you feel as if they're doing that? Or?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, there's no question. I think that the big banks have made definitely made an effort to make it better. That it has gotten better. There's no question about it. If you ask anybody, any of the lawyers involved in this space, today getting a loan modification is much better than it was 2 years ago or a year ago. I mean, it has gotten better. Now, it's not going to be easy. I mean, it's never going to be easy. It's just never going to be. It is. Servicers are not companies that were set up to have customer service departments and write down loans. It was never set up that way, so it's never going to be easy. But it's certainly much better today than it was any time in the past.
Well,
that's why I don't like. That's why I hate seeing people give up, because it gets better. I mean, don't give up.
Well, I know that both you, Martin, and John have been really good about helping homeowners go through this modification process, and I want to make sure that everybody has your contact information. So, Martin, your email is mandelman@mac.com. Is that correct?
Right, mandelman@mac.com. And if you don't hear back from me, send an email to John or send another one to me. I do my best to keep up with these things, but it's very difficult.
So, John, what is your email address that you want everyone to email to?
They can send their email to piggybankblog@earthlink.net.
Now, John, I know that you're really, really good about responding, and I know, Martin, that you try to respond. So I want to make sure that anyone who has any information or questions, or they want to start a loan modification, for them to contact both of you guys. And I know, Martin, you've been very good about you've been very successful in getting these loan modifications done. And John, I know you definitely have been very successful in getting these done. Is there anything you would like for homeowners to know, prior to them notifying you or contacting you as far as wanting to get a loan modification done?
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, you can also contact any of my trusted attorneys on my site. They're also people you can count on and know that you'll get the right answer from. I mean, do your research, check everything out. Whatever anybody tells you, check it out 3 times. I mean, verify, make sure you've got accurate information. I mean, I tell you, the facts on my blog are always right. But I don't want anybody to believe them either. Go check it out 3 times. Check it out every which way you can. Don't write anyone a check for anything until you're sure that the information's correct and that you're on the right path for you. And whether it's a loan modification is just one way. I mean, there's short sales, there's deed in lieu, cash for keys, where you can get a check and move and be ready to buy another house in 2 years. There's Chapter 13 bankruptcy. There's a number of different things you can do. Suing your bank should be the last resort.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you for your words of wisdom. John, I appreciate you. Now, John, do you have any last words of wisdom that you would like to say?
Well, I just want to once again echo what Martin's saying there. And the words of wisdom I want to give is there's a vast amount of information out there on the internet. Now, just because you read it on the internet doesn't make it true.
When they hand $1 trillion out, I'll be standing with my hand out. Yes, sir, I'll get mine.